Hey everybody, Danielle Hargenrader here, and welcome to another episode of Unleash Your Inner Diabetes Dominator. Today I have a really awesome guest. Marina Tsaplina is a versatile kinesthetic performing artist. As the founder of the Beaties organization, she brings the power and enhancement of theater, puppetry, and clown into the diabetes healthcare space to address emotional health and the lived experience of diabetes. She is passionate in strengthening the patient voice, destigmatizing depression, and connecting different sides of the healthcare sector into a unified conversation through the power of theater. And she's based in New York City. So thank you so much for joining us today, Marina. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. I'm excited to have you here. So Marina and I actually just met for the first time. We met at the Master Lab sessions I guess it was about 2 months ago at this point, and I knew immediately that she would be a perfect interviewee for this series. So I actually don't know too much about your story of diagnosis either, so let's get right into the story as we normally do here. And if you're willing to share a little bit with us about your story of diagnosis and kind of the road that you traveled to get from where you were then to where you are now.
I'm not going to share anything on this public forum with you, Danielle. As a matter of fact, I think we should stop this. No. My diagnosis story was I was 2 years old, so I can't really tell you the story exactly. I think my mom would be able to tell you a lot more eloquently. But what I do know is that I stopped being able to walk, and that I was showing symptoms for a while. My mom kept saying there's something wrong with my child, and my dad kept going, no, there's nothing wrong. And so that went on for quite a bit until I lost my capacity to walk, and then they took me to the emergency room.
Wow.
In Russia, actually in the former Soviet Union. And so care there was very limited overall. I mean, I got diagnosed fine, but supplies were like shipped in from the United States from friends. I was checking my blood sugar like once a week.
Wow.
And not because my mom was negligent, but because there was just not enough supplies.
Sure.
And so we immigrated here when I was 5. And a big reason for the immigration was my diabetes. And I came over and my A1C was a 14. And again, that's just through the reality of access to supplies. So, do you want me to go from there until now, or?
I want you to share what you feel willing to share. There's no cap or anything right or wrong to say here. So I want you to just share what you're comfortable sharing.
Sure. Well, and so I guess in my teenage years there were like a few times where diabetes like really came to the forefront, but I say that it took me 25 years to become conscious of the fact that I have type 1. And maybe part of that comes from me being diagnosed so young, and I think part of it comes from the overall, what I call the mental health of my family, which has been pretty disparate and not well even keel.
I think we all have a little bit of that to some extent, depending on our families. I certainly understand that as part of the background.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it's just like levels of degree.
Oh yeah.
Like all families are dysfunctional. It's like how much on the side. So I in retrospect realized that I was pretty severely depressed all throughout my teenage years, which led me to attempt suicide when I was 19. And then the consequences of that, the emotional and mental consequences of that, echoed out and really still echo out throughout my life. You know, things don't just happen and then you move on. I mean, maybe for some people it do, but for me it was a pretty significant point of my own journey. And so sort of coming out from all of that has led me to where I am now, which is having an organization and a company that focuses on the complex interplay between diabetes and depression and emotional health, and the culture and community that surrounds the person with the chronic health condition, and also the importance of the healthcare community, specifically clinicians who are on the front lines of the care experience. And the necessity for them to better understand the inner life of the person or their patient.
Yeah, so you said a lot there, and I want to touch on a couple things. So obviously at 19 years old, this kind of the Beatties organization, was that even something that you had conceptualized before, or was this obviously the clinicians and all this other stuff? Maybe at 19 you were aware of the necessity for that to be, you know, addressed and things like that, or was that just a gradual kind of build up after the suicide attempt? And also I wanted to ask you, for people watching and also for my own, you know, interest, was it the depression and the diabetes that were the main catalysts for the attempt, or was it also part of what you said, the kind of family dynamic, or was it just all kind of together?
I mean, at the moment that it happened, it was none of that. It was me feeling a lot of pain.
Okay.
And me thinking that the best solution to end that pain was to cut myself out of the picture.
Sure.
The repercussions of understanding that decision, which took many years of unfolding all of that, right? Then brings in, the family dysfunction. A history of depression. Then come in all the labels.
Mm-hmm.
But when it was happening and when I was in that state, I didn't have connection to any of these kind of like what I call high level thinking, right? Because I was purely emotionally driven and really distraught, and also didn't have the inner tools set up, like an inner network in myself to protect myself from such actions. So right. So yeah, all of the smart stuff came later. And no, at 19, I absolutely did not, the BDs was not even a thing. I mean, when I was 5, I wanted to be an artist, a dancer, a teacher, and a doctor, a diabetes doctor. So in some crazy way, the BDs is a combination of all of that.
Absolutely.
But at 19, I knew that I was an artist and pursuing an artistic path, but I was actually pursuing animation and filmmaking. So okay. Different track.
Okay. So that's a good point to kind of show people. It's like, you know, I certainly didn't know at 19 that I wanted to do what I'm doing today either. It's a good kind of reminder that, you know, even if that is, you know, the traditional college age and, you know, you're supposed to be declaring majors and things like that, even though you did know you wanted to be kind of in the performing arts in some capacity, you know, it's not a big deal not to know. And I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life until I was 26 or 27. And, you know, at this point, it's still ever expanding and ever changing. So it's, I want people out there, especially young people, to know it's not a big deal if you're not set up at 19 to know what your life is.
There's so much pressure to like, and even like the idea of like, what is your life purpose? Oh my God, that is so overwhelming. Like, just forget that language. Like, try to develop discipline where you do things daily and you stay committed to something and just let yourself explore.
Yeah,
like,
I think that's
so really much pressure to be something, and it's just not necessary.
I agree. And I kind of like play to the, you know, I like, you know, if somebody feels like they have a life purpose, I think that's a wonderful thing. But I think that if, you know, that's something that someone's trying to figure out, the best way to do it is follow the things that make you genuinely happy, where you feel like you're connecting with other people in some way, shape, or form, and that you find like immense amounts of joy in doing the activities involved, and you'll find out whatever it is, or maybe you never will, and you're just kind of want to be happy. That's, I mean, for me, that's above all else. It's like, I want my life purpose is to live in a happy place and to help other people be happy. And I think it can be something that simple. I think people get caught up in like, am I supposed to, you know, find a molecule that's going to, you know, cure this disease or that disease? And like, maybe you are going to do that and that would be amazing, but it's not necessary to define that maybe ever. And I agree with that fully.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So obviously you've shared, and I usually have people share, you know, something that they've struggled with, and you obviously shared a struggle, but maybe you could share, because obviously you're doing pretty well now as far as, you know, you have your nonprofit organization. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And you're doing well with being able to help other people deal with the living situation as far as having a chronic illness. But was there anything specifically related to diabetes other than obviously you had some issues getting your medical supplies when you were living Russia, but something that you may have struggled with, maybe that you've overcome. You know, I've had people say, you know, they had an intense fear of needles, or for me, I had a very serious eating disorder. I also struggled with depression. Was there anything with your diabetes story that you feel like really kind of knocked you back, but you were able to kind of overcome, or that maybe you're still working on?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say something. I'm going to go against the grain here, and I think a lot of that, in a lot of what we all want to be the case. I really had to admit the fact that diabetes actually does set restrictions, and that doesn't mean that I can't pursue things and that I don't have a path and that I'm not a performing artist, but that living with a chronic health condition creates specific circumstances and rules that I must abide by. And so I think the sort of downside of the fact of saying like, yeah, you know, you're just like everyone else, there's nothing wrong, you know, like like that, it's very healthy on one level, but for me at least, what that translated into is, oh, I can literally, I'm as if I'm not more fragile. So me admitting to the fact that there is a fragility within my physical and mental health system, inner like body system, that is unique, and that is why there is an entire diabetes community, right? And patients that are bonding together over all of this. I think that's really important. And so that was, I think, a big part of my own journey. It was coming to embrace that, and then actually finding strength in that, and really deep empowerment and meaning through that. But I had to be honest for it first. Yeah.
I think that's actually a brilliant point there. And I guess I never personally like to even think of the word fragile, but I think you're right. Because, you know, I like to think of, you know, having strength and having all of this, you know, but I agree. It is about embracing the fact that we are different, but it doesn't necessarily make us different in a bad way. We're different in our own way, just like everybody's different in their own way. But yes, I agree. Living with diabetes certainly does place some level of restriction on our ability to do certain things. You know, obviously I'm athletic, but sometimes if I'm in the middle of a workout and my blood sugar goes low, guess what? I have to stop. Like, you know, most people don't ever have to deal with anything like that. And as far as, you know, just the simplest things about food, it's like, yeah, if I eat a bunch of donuts and candy, my blood sugar is going to suck for the next 3 days. There's really no,
and I'm not going to be happy.
Yeah, I'm going to probably also beat myself up about it, even though I consciously made the decision to do so. But yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really valid point. And I also think that that's something that probably everybody with diabetes has struggled with or continues to struggle with, is that we all want to be, I don't know why we all want to be normal, because to me, like, I don't necessarily want to be normal, like, you know, just following the crowd, but it does create, you know, that kind of sense of, I'm standing a little bit outside of this crowd when I have to be checking my blood sugar and I have these, you know, things hanging off my body in random spots that are, you know, functioning as my internal organs. And yeah, absolutely. I think that, well, I think
it's like, it's really questioning this idea of normal, right? Meaning that it's saying that we have a unique fingerprint, right? That each one of us has a unique fingerprint, and the diabetes creates its own fingerprint in the way that you impact life and the way that life impacts you. It actually, like, it's not even about normal or not. It's just that there's a unique set of circumstances here, that the best path forward is to be honest to them, and then finding freedom within the limitation, right? I mean, freedom actually can only exist through limitation. So just being honest and empowered through that path and not denying it or trying to like run away from it, you know?
Yeah, and I think the word that you used was embrace, which I use that word very often, because it's kind of like a lot of, I mean, I certainly, whatever the opposite of embrace is, I struggled very hard with the fact that I had diabetes for about 10 years, throughout my entire teenage life. I definitely considered it to be, I thought maybe that I had been a mass murderer in a previous lifetime and I had some karma that was coming back to make me, you know, I deserve to have, you know, death in my family, and then disease, and then, you know, eating disorders. Like, I was obviously a horrible person. I had this whole, I struggled. I said, you know what, there's something wrong here. And then as I got older, learned a lot more, you know, decided to change what I believed about what was and wasn't possible for the outcome of my life. I decided that believing what I believed about that was more harmful to me than the actual diabetes was, that I needed to just, you know, and then I realized eventually that it was, you know, diabetes was part of my life. I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't deserve to suffer, and that I was only suffering because I was making the choices myself that were causing me to suffer. And I think that it's a process. It's a long process that I think we all go through at some point to some level or degree. So for sure. So why don't you tell us about the Beatties organization? Obviously, we know just what I read in the bio, and I know a little bit just from about, I read up on your work and met you in person, but because it's a pretty unique thing that you do, and I think that there's a gigantic need for it in the healthcare realm. So give us a little background on that.
Sure. Well, so it was founded on December 5th, 2013. And it absolutely came from my own personal background and realizing a few things about, and one of the things that I always say is that I realized that my diabetes had always been treated like a machine, as if it was just this biological functional car, you know, where, you know, the engine broke, you gotta like put a vial in there, and versus, again, what we have just been saying, that there's this unique set of circumstances that arise. And that unique, it's not like a global thing, right? It's unique to every person. There are like global things that you can say, but each person's experience of diabetes is unique. And so my background as a performing artist, I've always looked for a place where theater can greater serve our society. But I couldn't quite find the path for that. And what I mean is that I wasn't interested in pursuing Broadway plays. There's nothing wrong with Broadway plays, but I didn't feel that was my path. I didn't want to go that way. And then I realized that the emotional and existential aspects of living with a chronic illness, and with mental health, and just the conversation on mental and emotional health, can be greatly served by theater. And so our programs of the Beatties organization, we are developing them in partnership with a clinical psychologist who focuses on the diabetes space. Before that, he was in the cancer space. But we create programs that embed theatrical performances into larger conversations. So for example, right now we're working on a complications piece. But we do this through a very, I get to say, so we don't like throw facts at you about complications, you know, or we don't even talk about the technical sides of caring for your complications. We talk about the inner experience of how such things can affect you, and do affect you. And all of that, of course, is infused with my own story and stories and projections and fears of complications. But then we also work in partnership with other patients who have different sets of experiences, right? And so that all comes into our work, and then it serves as a way to broaden the voice, to broaden the experience of all of this in order to help people go through that journey themselves. And because it's theatrical medium, we can reach broader groups. You know, we can have a group of 40 or 50 people easily, and then we're all having a shared conversation where everybody went through a similar experience, right? Because theater is a similar yet unique experience. Everybody saw the same thing, but will have their own responses, but there will be overall arcs. So, and so we work with patients, we work with families, and then we work with providers. And for providers, we focus on the fact of them being able to connect more clearly to the patient experience and understanding how these issues affect people individually, emotionally, in various capacities. So, so that's a bit of what we do, and we do it through like really colorful ways. We use puppetry. You know, we use We use different colorful props. We incorporated a bit of clowning, but not like scary clowning. I'll probably never have a clown nose on. We use mask work. And these are all just ways to make seen and something like visible and tactile these often invisible things, right? Like all of the back end that happens in your mind as conversations are happening and as you're going through your life, we make that public. Yeah. We put them on the stage and you could see it and you can respond to it. And that's a therapeutic process in and of itself.
I would even venture as far as to say, as somebody who has experienced traditional therapy on many levels throughout my life, from psychologists to psychiatrists to meeting with other people that are dealing with the same issues that I'm dealing with, I can imagine that being in a situation like that, where even if, you know, there were 40 or 50, actually probably even could be more impactful if there were 40 or 50 people who are, like you said, going through the same experience, but obviously everybody having their own interpretation of that experience, how therapeutic that it must be to have that, you know that you're standing around or sitting around with all of those other people who are coming to their own realizations based on that same kind of internal dialogue that you are now bringing external, and you're thinking, oh my God, I thought that, but everybody else thought that too. And it's just this, like, it's like almost like a catharsis. Like you're like, oh, like it's like a weight being lifted off, being involved with all of those people who are feeling the same thing. And now it's finally being said out loud. And you're just like, just in that moment, just the level of therapeutic, effect that it's having on people. It's got to be incredible to be in that.
Absolutely. And so we're working hard to actually find the measures to validate and measure these therapeutic effects. So we are not therapy, because we're not going to sit there with you one-on-one sort of working through your, I don't have the expertise for that. But we do work in partnership with mental health workers who help guide our work and how conversations can go in order to basically create like an additional safety net, because these are fragile spaces.
Oh yeah.
We are dealing with we're dealing with a complexity of the human mind and heart and, and the interrelationship with all of that. So, one of the most amazing experiences so far for the BDs, for me in the BDs, has been at Master Lab, which is where you and I met. And in the second focus group that I left on mental health, there was a 15-minute performance, and I believe there were about 18 people who were in that session. And the work and the shared conversation it creates, to me, it felt like this little portal. We opened a portal of safety and community and mutual support, where we all just embraced and held the experience that we all had. And everybody wrote in response to the piece of performance. And then we all shared those stories. So it creates this network, right? And suddenly everyone is more connected and listening really carefully and not projecting experience onto someone else, right? Because that's one of the tricky things, is that someone who feels stronger can easily overshadow someone who is in a weaker state. And so we work really hard, and an important facilitation process is to allow each voice to come in with equal value. Yeah. Where there's not a dominant experience that covers the whole thing, right? Like your response is valid.
I think of it as like a co-creation of reality. That's like what I think of. It's like, it's everybody's reality, but we're all together co-creating it in one little group.
Absolutely. Yeah. Which is the beauty of storytelling.
Yeah.
Stories happen between people. So
yeah.
Me telling you a story, the meaning happens between us.
Yep. That's amazing. So I'm obviously, as I always do, I'm going to connect, underneath the blog and underneath the YouTube video, all of the places where people can find you. Is there anything in particular that the BDs is working on now that you want to share? Any new and upcoming things, or are we just looking forward to more performances and, things like that? What's on the horizon?
Well, we have, we'll be at 2 conferences. One is this is actually more towards the winter, but it'll be the Expressive Arts Therapy Summit in New York City, where we're presenting with Dr. Ken Gorfinkel, whom is part of the Beatties team, and my creative partner, Deborah Kaufman. And so we'll be speaking and presenting on the therapeutic aspects of the work. So in case you're in New York City, that's November 7th, I believe we're there. That's a Saturday. I'll confirm the date. And then we'll be in Vancouver for the International Diabetes Federation's World Diabetes Congress. And we have a poster there, so just a poster presentation. I can confirm those dates once we have them, because we don't have them yet. And then we're working on a big networking event, which will include an hour-long program of our work, and it'll all be new work in the way that you just heard me speak. So they're going to be new theatrical pieces, and this is dominantly for healthcare providers. So this will be in March 2016, and we're planting the opportunity for providers to better connect and understand the patient experience, and from a very humanistic and human-centered, patient-driven perspective. So that's also in New York City, and it's going to be, I think that's going to be our biggest event yet. Yeah, it's a lot of work. That's where a lot of our energy is right now.
Cool. Yeah, and I think it's going into probably a space that has the most need for it, which is, and I talk about this in blogs and in general, is that providers don't generally provide any support for the emotional fallout of being diagnosed initially. Just this whole, I see it as like a kind of, you need to go through a mourning process, just like you would if somebody that you love very much passed away. You have to kind of mourn maybe the loss of the life that you were used to, and be ready to kind of, I call it a rebirth of like a new, more, whatever life that it is that you're going to live now. And then the continuing kind of, it's not like the emotional side of living with a chronic disease just goes away like a year after diagnosis. Like, this is something.
I'm done now. That's cool.
Yeah. All right, the grieving process is over. This 24/7, 365 stuff that nobody can really see is like totally no big deal. Yeah, so like I think that the healthcare providers definitely need, and I don't think that they don't want to do it. I think that they just don't have the means or the training or the capacity in their previous training to do that. So I think that this is going to be huge. And I genuinely hope that there are a ton of providers that end up showing up for this event because of the incredible need for it on the patient side. So yeah, I'll definitely, keep me posted on that. I'll post about it as it gets closer. The only thing that sucks in a personal level is I'm actually moving to California in March of 2016. Otherwise, I would totally come. I mean, I'm like probably an hour and a half away from you. So, well, we'll see. We'll see how the moving goes. Maybe it'll be timed properly, because I'd like to at least even just go and like, do a diabetes like insider look at it and share it with the world, because it's awesome.
Sure. Yeah, we'll have a few positions for to be present and for back from their perspective. I mean, it's really about combining the different sides. So this event we say we want at least 50% providers present, hopefully more really, but at least 50%. And I want to clarify, I think most doctors, most clinicians, physicians, diabetes educators, nurses, endocrinologists, they come in with a really genuine care for their practice and for their field. It's not through a lack of good intention that the system as we have it now, unfortunately, doesn't have room for this kind of understanding, for this kind of dialogue, for this type of experience. So we're working on creating fairly regular opportunities to engage in this side of the conversation, and engage a really unique way that, again, just pulls everyone together, all these different sides. And we'll be working with one person with diabetes, on the complications piece. So her story's coming into that piece as well. And it's a new way of working for us in how we're doing this. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. And I think a lot of people out there, once not that people already know obviously what you're doing, but this I think only has the potential to go so far as it goes with being able to work. Like you said, I think most endocrinologists, most that I've seen in my life, do have that genuine concern where they do want to make it better for their patients. But I believe, just like any life experience, it's difficult to offer insight on the intricacies of the emotional side of living with a chronic illness if you don't actually live with a chronic illness yourself, or have been trained or immersed in kind of a dialogue with people with the outright intention of being able to provide that support back to your patients. So this is I think you're kind of pioneering this side of healthcare that is, like you said, the need is there, the desire is there, but the actual room for it in the space has not been kind of made yet, but we need to be making room for these things that are incredibly important. So awesome. I'm very excited. So as I normally do, I'm going to ask you, what are your top 3 tips for thriving with diabetes? Things that have worked for you personally, or maybe things that you have seen work for people that you've worked with through your programs, or a combination of the two, or whatever you want to share.
Yeah. So my 3 tips for thriving are, 1 is being honest to your own experiences, being honest and not being afraid of speaking from the truth of your experience. And that regards emotional health, mental health, physical health needs. You know, I kind of call them your health boundaries. We need to develop health boundaries in a very, very precise way and know exactly what that is for us, and then be able to stand up for them. So honesty of your health boundaries is 1. 2, exercise. Oh my gosh. If you, you know, and I'm going to speak here really honestly. So the past year, because I've been so busy writing emails, just leading an organization, I've become a lot more still, like sitting on my butt still, working still. Whereas before that, I was doing aerial acrobatics for 3.5 months, 25 hours a week.
Wow.
The difference in my physical health is huge. Like I just feel my body. And of course that happens to anybody. You know, you sit without movement, like you're going to feel more stiff, but especially for diabetes, like so important. So important. And so that's 2, move your body however you want. It doesn't have to be huge, 20 minutes a day, 4 days a week, like whatever it is.
Yeah.
And 3 is to not expect others to know.
Yes, that's a great one.
So yes, we want people to understand, but it's not an assumption on anyone to know what one is, your health boundaries, right? And what this is for you. So, and you know, there's actually, I learned this from Dr. Ken Gorfinkel, who again is a clinical psychologist with diabetes. He says that, I love that cattail.
Just can't stay away. Sorry guys, this is my helper right here.
He said that specifically about partnerships, so romantic partnerships in particular, but that, so an individual, you as an individual will go through something, right? Say you had an argument at work as a person, but then you come in and share it with your creative, with your artistic partner. This partnership is now going through that experience in a whole new way, right? So you're not coming in with your bias that was here and the experience here. You're like introducing something new into this dynamic. So applying that in the same way towards introducing anybody into the diabetes dialogue, you know, and this happens, right? Like you hear this all the time, stop offering me sugar, or, you know, whatever it is. Or why do you think I can't have sugar? Whatever your kind of shtick is, don't assume. People don't know. Everybody has so much going on. So think of each interaction as like it's a new opportunity. It's a new something to explore. Give people the benefit of the doubt. Yeah.
And be willing, I think, like, just to tag on is like, be willing to be a little bit of an educator. Maybe if not, like, you don't want to teach them everything, but say, you know, hey, maybe that's kind of what you said, that's what they know about diabetes, and they think they need to offer you sugar or not offer you sugar. It's like, hey, you know, maybe you just tell them this one time and it'll change their interaction with everybody else with diabetes moving forward. Like, hey, I can have sugar if I bolus for it if I choose that that's what's right for me today at this time, you know?
Mhm.
And just so you know, maybe people with diabetes don't want to hear that, and nothing against you, but you know, just be willing to educate. I totally agree with that. And nobody knows. And most people don't know. Most people know less than you even think, especially about diabetes. So yeah, don't be afraid to educate, and don't let the lack of knowledge make you angry, because I used to do that and it sucks.
Right. It's so easy to do that. It makes sense. You know, you're just like, oh, why don't, but just give everybody the benefit of the doubt and the respect of, and the integrity of being a different person other than you are.
Yeah. Awesome. So great. Everything you said, very much educational and inspirational. And I loved everything you had to say. But as I always say to everybody, you know, all good things must come to an end. So is there anything else that you would like to share with any of the viewers out there before we kind of wrap it up here? And I'm actually, don't worry, everybody, I'm going to have all of the links underneath, so you can just click all over, find the BDs, find her Facebook page and all that stuff. So don't rewind or try to find where we talked about it. Anything else you want to share?
Only that I think because we're building this kind of collaborative effort on specifically the conversation in regards to depression and diabetes, those two in partnership, and then also complications. I was going to hold up that finger, that'd be bad. Complications and diabetes. So depression and diabetes and complications and diabetes. These two conversation streams. If you have personal narratives in regards to this, please, and you'd like to share them and you'd like to bring them to a broader healthcare community, please email us, email me. It's marina@thebds.org. And we can talk about potentially incorporating that into our event in March.
Awesome. So I will also put Marina's email address below. And yeah, let her know if you want to have, I mean, how awesome would that be? You're having your own inner dialogue, and then you get to see that kind of played out on a stage. I mean, and see how it affects how many other people that are going to be there. Super cool. I think that's a great opportunity for learning and growing. So awesome. All right, cool. Well, as usual here, we are going to wrap it up. And Marina, thank you for sharing your insights. I genuinely enjoyed getting to know you better, as I'm sure everybody out there watching is saying themselves right now. And so yeah, go forth and do everything you're doing. Go do all that nonprofit grant writing. I bow to you and all of the work that goes into that. And we will catch you guys on the next episode. All right. Thanks so much, Marina, and take care, everybody.
Thank you so much.